Hey, did everybody have a good time horseback riding today?
I had a great time, but my horse was kind of slow.
Mine wasn't. He was too fast.
Anybody have any ideas for activities for the rest of the evening?
I have an idea. Why don't we tell a few stories?
Hey, sounds good to me. Anybody want to go first?
Since I thought of the brilliant idea, I'll go first.
Okay, what you got, Joe?
Well, last semester in college, I took this American history course, and there's a lot of great stories.
I took that class, too. I really learned a lot.
Do you remember the poem by Longfellow about Paul Revere?
Yeah, you mean Paul Revere's Ride?
Yeah, the patriot who rode around saying, "The British are coming, the British are coming." Yeah.
Henry Wadsworth Longfellow is sometimes called the children's poet, but he could as well be called the American history poet, since many of his best-known works are drawn from the roots of our country's past. Paul Revere's Ride is such a poem. Paul Revere was a silversmith as well as a patriot. Although credited with the famous ride, Revere was only part of a team of riders who set out that fateful night. Revere himself was arrested by the British before he could complete his ride, but thanks to Longfellow's poem, his name lives on. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in '75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, "If the British march by land or from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light. One if by land, and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm." Then he said good night, and with muffled oar silently rowed to the Charlestown shore, just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide at her moorings lay the Somerset, British man of war. A phantom ship, with each mast and spar across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Meanwhile, his friend, through alley and street, wanders and watches with eager ears. Till in silence around him he hears the master of men at the barrack door, the sound of arms and the tramp of feet, and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching down to their boats on the shore. Then he climbed the tower of the old North Church by the wooden stairs with stealthy tread to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled some pigeons from their perch on the somber rafters that round him made masses of moving shapes of shade. By the trembling ladder, steep and tall, to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down a moment on the roofs of the town and the moonlight flowing over all. Beneath, in the churchyard, lay the dead in their night encampment on the hill, wrapped in silence so deep and still that he could hear, like a sentinel's tread, the watchful night wind as it went creeping along from tent to tent and seeming to whisper, "All is well." A moment only he feels the spell of the place and the hour and the secret dread of the lonely belfry and the dead. For suddenly, all his thoughts are bent on a shadowy something far away, where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black that bends and floats on the rising tide like a bridge of boats. Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred, with heavy stride on the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side. Now he gazed at the landscape far and near. Then, impetuous, stamped the earth, and turned and tightened his saddle girth. but mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the Old North Church as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still. And lo, as he looks, on the belfry's height, a glimmer, and then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes, till full on his sight a second lamp in the belfry burns. A hurry of hoofs in the village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles in passing a spark struck out by a steed flying fearless and fleet. That was all, and yet, through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night. And the spark struck out by that steed in his flight kindled the land into flame with its heat. He had left the village and mounted the steep, and beneath him, tranquil and broad and deep, is the Mystic, meeting the ocean tides. And under the alders that skirts its edge, now soft on the sand, now loud on the ledge, is heard the tramp of his steed as he rides. It was 12 by the village clock when he crossed the bridge into Medford town. He heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog, and felt the damp of the river fog that rises after the sun goes down. It was 1 by the village clock when he galloped into Lexington. He saw the gilded weathercock swim in the moonlight as he passed. And the meeting house windows, blank and bare, gaze at him with a spectral glare, as if they already stood aghast at the bloody work they would look upon. It was 2 by the village clock when he came to the bridge in Concord town. He heard the bleating of the flock and the twitter of birds among the trees, and felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing over the meadows brown. And one was safe and asleep in his bed, who at the bridge would be first to fall, who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball. You know the rest in the books you've read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again under the trees at the turn of the road, and only pausing to fire and load. So through the night, Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For born on the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere.
That was a good poem.
Yeah, it was. It's a good thing that Paul Revere didn't have a pokey horse like yours, Jenny. Otherwise, we would have been in a lot of trouble.
I know.
Yeah, we'd probably still be British. You got any other poems?
Yeah, I think I have a few more.
Yeah, so do I.
How about the Battle of Bunker Hill?
June 17th, 1775. 3,000 English redcoats were ordered to disperse the ragged rebel army which was defending Boston. Farmers, shopkeepers, tailors, men and boys, but patriots all, had assembled on a hilltop to repulse the attack. The battle was actually fought on Breed's Hill, but history has recorded it as the Battle of Bunker Hill. It is quite possible that the grandmother of this story could have witnessed the battle as she says, for the people of Boston did take to the roofs of their houses and the towers of their churches to watch the battle, which could be seen from such vantage points in the city. 'Tis like the stirring living embers when at 80 one remembers all the aching and the quaking of the times that tried men's souls. When I talk of Whig and Tory, when I tell the rebel story, to you the words are ashes, but to me they're burning coals. I had heard the muskets rattle of the April running battle. Lord Percy's hunted soldiers, I can see their red coats still. But a deadly chill comes o'er me as the day looms up before me when 1,000 men lay bleeding on the slopes of Bunker's Hill. 'Twas a peaceful summer's morning when the first thing gave us warning was the booming of the cannon from the river and the shore. "Child," says Grandma, "what's the matter? What is all this noise and clatter? Have those scalping Indian devils come to murder us once more?" Poor old soul. My sides were shaking in the midst of all my quaking, to hear her talk of Indians when the guns began to roar. She had seen the burning village, and the slaughter and the pillage, when the Mohawks killed her father with their bullets through his door. Then I said, "Now, dear old Granny, don't you fret and worry any, for I'll soon come back and tell you whether this is work or play. There can't be mischief in it, so I won't be gone a minute." For a minute then I started. I was gone the livelong day. No time for bodice lacing or for looking-glass grimacing. Down my hair went as I hurried, tumbling halfway to my heels. God forbid your ever knowing, when there's blood around her flowing, how the lonely, helpless daughter of a quiet household feels. In the street I heard a thumping, and I knew it was the stumping of the corporal, our old neighbor, on that wooden leg he wore, with a knot of women round him. It was lucky I had found him, so I followed with the others, and the corporal marched before. They were making for the steeple, the old soldier and his people. The pigeons circled round us as we climbed the creaking stair. Just across the narrow river, oh, so close it made me shiver, stood a fortress on the hilltop that but yesterday was bare. Not slow our eyes to find it. Well we knew who stood behind it, though the earthwork hid them from us, and the stubborn walls were dumb. Here were sister, wife, and mother, looking wild upon each other, and their lips were white with terror as they said, "The hour has come." The morning slowly wasted. Not a morsel had we tasted, and our heads were almost splitting with the cannon's deafening thrill, when a figure, tall and stately, round the rampart strode sedately. It was Prescott, one since told me. He commanded on the hill. Every woman's heart grew bigger when we saw his manly figure, with the banyan buckled around it, standing up so straight and tall, like a gentleman of leisure who is strolling out for pleasure. Through the storm of shells and cannon shot, he walked around the wall. At 11, the streets were swarming, for the redcoats' ranks were forming. At noon, in marching order, they were moving to the piers. How the bayonets gleamed and glistened as we looked far down and listened to the trampling and the drumbeat of the belted grenadiers. At length the men have started, with a cheer, it seemed faint-hearted, in their scarlet regimentals with their knapsacks on their backs, and the reddening, rippling water, as after a sea-fight slaughter, round the barges gliding onward blushed like blood along their tracks. So they crossed to the other border, and again they formed in order, and the boats came back for soldiers, came for soldiers, soldiers still. The time seemed everlasting to us women faint and fasting. At last they're moving, marching, marching proudly up the hill. We can see the bright steel glancing all along lines advancing. Now the front rank fires a volley. They have thrown away their shot. For behind their earthwork lying, all the balls above them flying, our people need not hurry. So they wait and answer not. Then the corporal, our old cripple, he would swear sometimes and tipple. He had heard the bullets whistle in the old French war before. Calls out in words of jeering, just as if they were all hearing, and his wooden leg thumps fiercely on the dusty belfry floor. "Ah, fire away, ye villains, and earn King George's shillings, but you'll waste a ton of powder afore a rebel falls. You may bang the dirt and welcome. They're as safe as Daniel Malcolm 10 foot beneath the gravestone that you've splintered with your balls." In the hush of expectation, in the awe and trepidation of the dread approaching moment, we are well nigh breathless all. Though the rotten bars are falling from the rickety belfry railing, we are crowding up against them like the waves against a wall. Just a glimpse. The air is clearer. They are nearer, nearer, nearer. When a flash, a curling smoke wreath, then a crash, the steeple shakes. The deadly truce is ended. The tempest's shroud is rended. Like a morning mist it gathered. Like a thundercloud it breaks. Oh, the sight our eyes discover as the blue-black smoke blows over. The redcoats stretched in windrows as a mower rakes his hay. Here a scarlet heap is lying. There a headlong crowd is flying like a billow that is broken and is shivered into spray. Then we cried, "The troops are routed! They are beat! It can't be doubted! God be thanked, the fight is over!" Ah, the grim old soldiers smile. Tell us why you look so." We could hardly speak, we shook so. "Are they beaten? Are they beaten? Are they beaten?" "Wait a while." Oh, the trembling and the terror. For too late we saw our error. They are baffled, not defeated. We have driven them back in vain. And the columns that were scattered round the colors that were tattered toward the sullen, silent fortress turn their belted breasts again. All at once, as we are gazing, lo, the roofs of Charlestown blazing. They have fired the harmless village. In an hour it will be down. The Lord in heaven confound them. Rain his fire and brimstone round them. The robbing, murdering redcoats, they would burn a peaceful town. They are marching, stern and solemn. We can see each massive column as they near the naked earth mound with the slanting walls so steep. Have our soldiers got faint-hearted and in noiseless haste departed? Are they panic-struck and helpless? Are they palsied or asleep? Now the walls they're almost under. Scarce a rod the foes asunder. Not a firelock flashed against them. Up the earthwork they will swarm. But the words have scarce been spoken when the ominous calm is broken, and a bellowing crash has emptied all the vengeance of the storm. So again, with murderous slaughter, pelted backwards to the water, fly Pigot's running heroes and the frightened braves of Howe. And we shout, "At last they're done for! It's their barges they have run for! They are beaten, 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 and the battle's over now!" As we looked, poor timid creatures, on the rough old soldier's features, our lips afraid to question, but he knew what we would ask. "Not sure," he said. "Keep quiet. Once more, I guess they'll try it. Here's damnation to the cutthroats." Then he handed me his flask, saying, "Gal, you're looking shaky. Have a drop of old Jamaiky. I'm afeard there'll be more trouble afore the job is done." So I took one scorching swallow. Dreadful faint I felt and hollow, standing there from early morning when the firing was begun. All through those hours of trial I had watched a calm clock dial, as the hands kept creeping, creeping. They were creeping round to 4. when the old man said, "They're forming with their bayonets fixed for storming. It's the death grip that's a-coming. They will try the works once more." With brazen trumpets blaring, the flames behind them glaring, the deadly wall before them, in close array they come. Still onward, upward toiling, like a dragon's fold uncoiling, like the rattlesnake's shrill warning, the reverberating drum. Over heaps all torn and gory, shall I tell the fearful story how they surged above the breastwork as a sea breaks over a deck? How driven, yet scarce defeated, our worn-out men retreated, from their powder horns all emptied like the swimmers from a wreck? It has all been told and painted. As for me, they say I fainted, and the wooden-legged old corporal stumped with me down the stair. When I woke from dreams affrighted, the evening lamps were lighted. On the floor a youth was lying, his bleeding breast was bare. And I heard through all the flurry, "Send for Warren, hurry, hurry! Tell him here's a soldier bleeding, and he'll come and dress his wound." We knew not till the morrow told its tale of death and sorrow, how the starlight found him stiffened on the dark and bloody ground. Who the youth was, what his name was, where the place from which he came was, who had brought him from the battle and had left him at our door, he could not speak to tell us. But 'twas one of our brave fellows, as the homespun plainly showed us, which the dying soldier wore. For they all thought he was dying, as they gathered round him crying, and they said, "Oh, how they'll miss him, and what will his mother do?" Then his eyelids, just unclosing like a child's that has been dozing, he faintly murmured, "Mother." And I saw his eyes were blue. "Why, Grandma, how you're winking!" "Ah, my child, it sets me thinking of a story not like this one. Well, he somehow lived along, so we came to know each other, and I nursed him like a mother, till at last he stood before me tall and rosy-cheeked and strong. And we sometimes walked together in the pleasant summer weather. Please tell us what his name was." "Just your own, my little dear. There's his picture, Copley painted. We became so well acquainted that, in short, that's why I'm Grandma, and you children all are here."
Good poem, huh?
Yeah, I think history is really interesting.
It sure is. The events that happened long ago make our country what it is today.
Yeah. I thought it was neat how the people of Boston got up on top of the rooftops and the church towers to watch the battle.
If that happened now, we'd have to stay on the skyscrapers to watch it.
We probably just watch the news.
Things sure are different today than they were a long time ago.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't move back then, because they didn't have video games or computers.
Yeah. What do you think, Sarah?
Let me hear another story.
Oh, I think that could be arranged. Anybody got another one?
I have a poem called Casabianca.
On August the 1st, 1798, during the Battle of the Nile, Admiral Lord Nelson's British fleet confronted the ships of Napoleon. On the French vessel Orient, a French officer, Louis de Casabianca, was killed. With him perished his son Giacomo, aged 10. The youthful Casabianca is the subject of this poem. The boy stood on the burning deck, whence all but he had fled. The flame that lit the battle's wreck shone round him o'er the dead. The flames rolled on, he would not go without his father's word. That father, faint in death below, his voice no longer heard. He called aloud, "Say, father, say, if yet my task is done." He knew not that the chieftain lay unconscious of his son. "Speak, father," once again he cried, "if I may yet be gone." And but the booming shots replied, and fast the flames rolled on. Upon his brow he felt their breath, and in his waving hair, and looked from that lone post of death in still yet brave despair, and shouted but once more aloud, "My father, must I stay?" While o'er him fast through sail and shroud the wreathing fires made way. They wrapped the ship in splendor wild, they caught the flag on high, and streamed above the gallant child like banners in the sky. Then came a burst of thunder sound. The boy, oh, where was he? Ask of the winds that far around with fragments strewed the sea, with mast and helm and pennon fair that well had borne their part. But the noblest thing that perished there was that young, faithful heart.
Well, it's been a long day. I think we could all use a little shut-eye, don't you?
Mm-hmm. It's been a fun day, though, don't you think?
Yeah.
I like the horseback riding.
I like the stories. Can we hear another one?
Well, not tonight. We got to get to bed. You guys got to get up early tomorrow morning and go hiking.
I'm kind of hungry. Can we have something to eat?
Sounds good to me. Anybody want some s'mores?
Yeah!
Okay.